वेलफेयर स्कीम से होता क्या है? कुछ होता भी है. Calling freebies just free stuff is very simplistic. A competitive race for bartering votes with freebies and still waiting on its multiplier effect to prove all pessimists wrong. How do we as voters analyze schemes smartly? Okay folks, it's election season. You know what that means. Elections bring speeches, slogans, manifestos, all which hold a long list of bold promises, which look something like this.
DMK has unveiled what it calls a superstar manifesto.
Temperatures have been on the rise, and now the AIADMK, which is, remember, within the ambit.
Also promises universal pakka housing, piped drinking water.
Continue to the nation's journey towards the big seat.
Free bus travel for all women in KSRTC buses.
As you just observed here, political parties step forward with electoral promises every election. These promises are not random. They are designed to persuade, mobilize, and win trust. But are all the promises bound by the same goals and intention of growth for all, including the state and nation? Well, that's for us to figure out. However, over the last few decades, two main broad categories of electoral promises have come into the limelight, which seem to influence elections the most at both the state and national level. These are welfare schemes and freebies.
You have a life, but no insurance? I have ready for you.
In today's video, we will answer a few pertinent questions like: what is welfare? What are freebies? How can you tell the difference between the two? And how do they impact voters, political parties, and the state exchequer? More importantly, how can we classify promises under the welfare and freebies category? Before we go ahead, subscribe to our channel for more such explainers that will enable you to be a more informed voter. Let's start with the basics. What is welfare? Welfare refers to an individual's or a group's overall health, happiness, and well-being. It focuses on safety, security, and quality of life. Let's understand this better through a few key lenses, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, India's constitution's directive principles of state policy, and Article 21. Let's start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This talks about the basic needs required for human survival. Our basic physiological needs and safety needs take precedence in order to attain higher order needs like community belonging, self-esteem, freedom, respect, etc. to become the best versions of ourselves. If we were to take Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the context of a nation, its citizens, and the government as a whole, then the government's job should broadly start and end at assisting citizens in fulfilling their physiological and safety needs at most. You see, India is a mixed economy, which means its economic and social structure is built on welfarism through capitalism. Moreover, as per the Indian Constitution too, we are a welfare state. This essentially means that India follows a system of governance where the government's chief responsibility is providing for the social and economic security of its population to meet their basic needs. Indian Constitution establishes India as a welfare state through Articles 38 to 47 in Part 4, which consists of the directive principles of state policy. While Article 38 specifically mentions that the state shall strive to secure a social order for the promotion of welfare of the people, other articles mention key basics such as adequate livelihood, equal pay, right to education, nutrition, and access to legal aid, etc. However, this is a directive principle of state policy, which means that it's only a guideline for the governments in power but not enforceable in courts. Furthermore, what is key, enforceable, and a fundamental right for all of us is Article 21. No person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. This is one such article that cannot be suspended even during a national emergency. While the article holds simplicity when you read it for the first time, it holds immense importance to our daily lives. Over time, the Indian judiciary has even expanded the scope of this article beyond the imagination of the constitution makers. Article 21 mentions the right to life. Moreover, the right to live with human dignity was a new dimension given to the Article 21 after the Supreme Court held in 1978 that the right to live is not merely a physical right but includes the right to live with human dignity. Over the last few decades, this article, through legal interpretation, has been expanded to include food, clean water, clean air, healthcare, social security, education, opportunities, legal aid, and even the right to die with dignity. Therefore, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, India's directive principles of state policy, and Article 21 all seem to land us at the same place. Food, water, clean environment, healthcare, education, etc. are the basic needs that must be met and require government intervention in the form of planning policies, proper execution, and a long-term vision to ensure accessibility to all under right to life. All that is broadly covered in India under the category of welfare. However, let's go a step further to understand welfare better. So far, we've covered what basic welfare can look like for an individual. Welfare can in fact be divided into 4 ambits, namely food and water security, healthcare security, education security, and infrastructure security. Food and water security ensures reliable access to nutritious food and clean water. Healthcare security guarantees affordable medical services, preventive care, and emergency treatment. And as society evolves and technology develops, so does the ambit of welfare. As in the case of infrastructure security, which encompasses roads, housing, reliable transportation, sanitation, electricity, and now, in line with the evolving times, digital connectivity. Same in the case of education security, which provides universal access to schooling, skills training, and now financial literacy. Without such crucial needs met, one would lag behind and not have the right to life fulfilled. For instance, the impact of education when the pandemic hit and classes switched to online mode. Those students who didn't have access to the internet, electricity, and tech couldn't access the basic right to education. So where does the government come in when it comes to welfare, as mentioned in the Indian Constitution? As we mentioned earlier, the government has a key role in protecting and promoting social welfare. It needs to ensure the basic needs are accessible and affordable for all. However, at times certain groups that are economically or socially disadvantaged need greater intervention via government intervention in achieving basic needs. That's where the targeted welfare schemes offered by governments enter the picture. For instance, during COVID, schemes like BharatNet, eVidya and Diksha were introduced to improve internet connectivity and access to digital education. You may have also heard of other schemes such as Right to Education, Ujjwala Yojana, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, PM Jan Dhan Yojana, health insurance schemes, Manrega, etc. Such government interventions in the forms of policies, laws, and schemes at both center and state levels have widely made basic needs accessible to millions upon millions, thereby elevating them from poverty and achieving higher needs. So, in summation, targeted welfare schemes should come in when these basic needs aren't met by all citizens and when there is a disparity between people itself, thereby creating disparity in accessing the basic needs itself. However, here's another point worth noting. It's important for welfare schemes to match the quality of services or products offered by private players so that the playing field is leveled to some extent. Key here is welfare schemes are meant to aid in accessing basic needs. Welfare schemes से होता क्या है? कुछ होता भी है? The answer is a big yes. Welfare schemes tend to have a multiplier effect. The multiplier effect is an economic concept where initial spending, in this case government spending, leads to a larger final increase in a nation's GDP. Let's understand welfare schemes and its multiplier effect through an example. The midday meal scheme launched by the Government of India in 1995 was inspired by Tamil Nadu, which introduced a midday meal program in 1925. By 1960s, under the vision of K. Kamraj, the program became a statewide reality, and by 1991, 12 states in India had followed suit. The scheme is the world's largest school feeding program that provides free cooked meals to over 11 to 12 crore students of government and government-aided schools. When it came to the midday meals multiplier effect, it was successful in addressing classroom hunger, boosting supplementary nutrition, increase in school attendance, enrollment, and lowering dropout rates. The scheme was also an economic relief for low-income households as the afternoon meals of children were taken care of. The greater picture: educated kids unlock better opportunities, stronger nutrition builds healthier bodies, improvement in household economics, greater participation in nation's growth. That's the multiplier effect in action. That's just one simple example with its multiplier effect undeniable. The same story can be traced for hundreds of other welfare measures. Therefore, good welfare schemes with good implementation is an individual's pathway to freedom, economic growth, and empowerment. Multiply this at the national level and you have the pathway set for national success. However, every welfare scheme should be re-evaluated in due time, and the policy cycle for every scheme should continue in order to improve, update, change, or disband the scheme depending on the evaluation results. Each welfare scheme serves set objectives, and upon its evaluation, the schemes should be ended or modified as needed. This will allow governments to focus on judiciously utilizing the funds and spend in areas requiring more attention while addressing the right problems. With this, we have covered what welfare truly means in context to basic needs, how the government plays a role in a welfare state, and the far-reaching impact of welfare schemes. What's the other one? The word freebies technically means goods, services, or benefits provided free of charge. Sounds a lot like welfare, yes? Then why does it spark some debate and discussions both online and offline, be it at the dinner table or a primetime debate?
That one person's revdi could be another person's welfareism. I'll give you a
Vote khareed that lure. First aap did
It's
it.
seduction.
DMK did it. Now you do it. You ape it. It's
Actually,
completely,
DMK started it in
Can I just say
1967.
that Bihar is very...
Well, for starters, calling freebies just free stuff is very simplistic without factoring in its consequences and multiplier effect. As the RBI stated in 2022, while there is no precise definition of freebies, it is necessary to distinguish them from public goods such as the PDS, health and education related schemes, employment guarantee schemes, and so on. Why did the RBI say so? Well, welfare schemes related to PDS, education, health, etc. all focus on basic needs. But freebies, well, they do more than just meeting basic needs. While welfare schemes provide people means and or the ability to become capable to achieve their individual needs beyond the basics, freebies tend to become the means to meet those higher needs directly or other higher needs itself. Freebies like utility waivers such as free electricity, consumer goods like laptops, smartphones, bicycles, mixers, grinders, fridges, TVs, and direct cash transfers for specific groups are often doled out before or during election campaigning these days, all which are above and beyond the basic needs criteria if we keep the same standard for everyone. Therefore, while freebies do have a lot in common with welfare schemes and hence are often used interchangeably, it's important to remember that welfare schemes can be considered freebies. But all freebies are not welfare schemes. We'll get into this later towards the end. Before that, let's continue to focus on freebies and figure out where the freebies culture and politics begins.
To give you an idea of the scale of the Amma largesse, we've assembled here the entire lot of freebies and subsidies that she's given in her 5 years, starting off with the famous free mixer, grinder and fan scheme. Then we come to free laptops to students, dhotis and saris, marriage assistance in cash, gold coins we tried to find but most villagers have sold them, cycles for 289 crores and a scheme for free goats and cows.
This was once the reality of Tamil Nadu, or let's call it the freebie inventor of India. But how did we even get this far? For this, we need to start with Madras's CM K. Kamraj, who was a state's CM in 1954. He kicked off a bold midday meal program in 1957 that sharply raised school attendance, inspiring other states to adopt it later. This was considered to be India's first freebie, but soon subsumed into welfare since it focused on helping basic needs, that is food security. Subsequent governments under M.G. Ramachandran, M. Karunanidhi and Jayalalitha built on this model, adding benefits such as free uniforms, footwear and educational support. However, this is where the story gets interesting. Though the 1980s and early 1990s saw a shift from welfare towards consumer-oriented goods, things took a sharp turn in 2006. The distribution of free color televisions by M. Karunanidhi These televisions reached 45 lakh households and completely twisted the game of welfare. This is where freebie culture sowed its seeds. To quote P.S. Srinivasan, a political observer, parties realized that an object that sits inside the house is far more powerful than a policy.
जिस राह पे तुम चल रहे हो बेटा, एक दिन पूरी तरह फंसोगे. उस दिन मुझे याद करना.
Enter Jayalalitha, the OG Amma of freebie politics.
Everything. I am in the thick of everything. I am in politics up to my neck. But yet, I am not a part of it.
Cows, gold, goats, laptops, scooters, mixer grinders, fans, Mangal Sutras, scooters, marriage assistants, and everything in between. Not to mention her very own brand subsidies like Amma canteens, Amma water, Amma salt, Amma dal, Amma cement, Amma seeds, and Amma pharmacies. By this time, the freebies ripple began to spread to other states. This was the spillover effect, or how benefits of public goods in one area impact the others nearby. In this case, other state politics and elections. Many states introduced many freebies, all taking inspo from Tamil Nadu, one can say with great confidence. Few such examples that come to mind would be Bihar, Odisha, Delhi, Telangana, Assam, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. It's also important to note that freebies are no longer instant handouts or gratifications to voters today. A more recent trend indicates the shift to long-term freebies wrapped in the form of guarantees and schemes. For instance, monthly cash transfers in states such as Maharashtra, Jharkhand, Odisha, Haryana, Karnataka, Bihar, and Andhra Pradesh has transcended across party lines, and its evidence for greater positive effects are yet to be studied statewide or nationwide. Though some of these freebies serve essentials like health, water, or electricity, the problem here is the free part of it all. Rather than building citizens' ability to pay for electricity or bus rides, freebies end up giving away things for free without focusing on creating a stronger ecosystem which would not require people to get these things for free. Because nothing is truly ever free. But again, as the freebie trend becomes a political contest, it does not come without a cost just because it's free for a particular group of voters in that moment for that exact item. Therefore, the next question should ideally be, what's the cost of these freebies, and is there an impact we might be missing out on considering? Let's get right to it. When we consider studying the cost and impact of freebies, we broadly need to consider the three key players involved. 1. The voter, who is the freebies beneficiaries, and also voters who are non-beneficiaries. 2. The political parties who make the freebie promises before elections. And 3. The state exchequer, who bears the cost of the promised freebies once the political party is elected and in government. Let's discuss how freebies impact the voters. To start off, as discussed in the earlier segment, freebies give us all the good feelings when it comes to the beneficiary since it's free. However, there are some hidden downfalls too. To start with, a sense of dependence settles in the mind of voters when freebies are handed out election after election. Moreover, since some freebies are handed out right before elections, they create a recency effect in the mind of voters and impact their voting choices. Therefore, your typical voter habituated to freebies would tend to look at what the government will give over what and how the government will do for long-term growth of an individual and the region as a whole. After all, freebies tend to become temporary lollipops for voters. But it doesn't just end there. Freebies tend to have a counter effect also on voters who are not beneficiaries of the freebies, which is not positive by any stretch. So let's understand both the positive and negative impacts through the example of free bus rides for women that was introduced by the Congress government under the Shakti scheme in Karnataka. As per a Lokniti CSDS statewide survey of 15 districts in Karnataka with a sample of 6,000 plus female beneficiaries, the scheme had achieved over 90% penetration among lower income women, with over 80% saving up to Rs 500 per week. Moreover, 34% of women from Bangalore urban reported new or improved employment, with 26% having secured new jobs. It's safe to say that this scheme enabled women beneficiaries to save money and be more independent in terms of mobility. However, on the flip side, free bus rides for women soon resulted in overcrowded buses, lack of sufficient buses, increase in taxi and auto fares, and inevitably bus fare hikes, like how Karnataka witnessed a 15% hike in 2025. Overcrowded buses became a daily challenge for majority male commuters, as demonstrated here by a 2024 survey that surveyed 385 male BMTC bus commuters in Bangalore. Moreover, overcrowded buses also meant other issues like conflict, increased stress, thievery, lack of ventilation, sexual harassment, etc., as demonstrated by the same survey. This is just one example to understand how freebies impact both the beneficiary and non-beneficiary voters positively and negatively. The same can be done for other freebies too when examined closely. Let's now come down to political parties. In 2022, PM Modi criticized the freebie culture by calling it the रेवड़ी culture.
आजकल हमारे देश में मुफ्त की रेवड़ी बांटकर वोट बटोरने का कल्चर लाने की भरसक कोशिश हो रही है.
Yet, BJP, like all other parties, does announce certain freebies before elections. When one wonders why such hypocrisy, a closer look at the electioneering culture tells us that political parties now are competing with each other on the basis of these freebies. Just as much candidate selection based on caste or even religion has played a role over the decades. You see, a 2021 Lokniti survey conducted among 4,354 voters in Tamil Nadu found that over 52% of respondents found free goods and services to be important in influencing their voting decisions. Similarly, a nationwide survey in 2019 involving more than 2.7 lakh people revealed that for 41.34% respondents, distribution of liquor, cash and freebies was an important factor behind voting, according to the Association for Democratic Reforms. Therefore, parties today collectively have agreed that they have no choice but to give in to this competition. Sure, the number of freebies offered might differ based on political parties' ideology, vision, and governance plan, but freebies competition is undeniable. So, freebies have skewed the political game and added a curveball to the concept of free and fair elections. It's made it a game of one-upping each other during election campaigning and making it a race of who gives the most free stuff. Thulam Saravanan would know. He was a candidate contesting from Madurai South in the 2021 Tamil Nadu Assembly elections. He promised a mini helicopter, rupees 1 crore and rupees 20 lakh, cars for every household, gold jewelry for married women, a 100-day trip to the moon, and a 300-foot artificial iceberg to cool the constituency. As funny as it sounds,
what is this? What? No, what, Pranay? Are you the
tells us how far the game of freebies can go if parties or candidates put their minds to it. And as the freebies game continues, the biggest mistake that political parties tend to make is not weighing the state exchequer and the long-term effects of the freebies they promise.
कैसे बढ़ाओगे?
ना मतलब ऐसा बिल्कुल इमीडिएट नहीं सोचे हैं, बट सोचेंगे.
This brings us to the final impact, that is the impact on the state exchequer. When it comes to freebies, political parties don't have to worry about party finances, since freebies come from state treasury funds. When these freebies go too far, the state exchequer suffers. The relationship between a state's fiscal health and freebie expenditure becomes toxic when political parties risk the state's financial discipline to win elections using freebies. Let's take a 2024 study to break this down. The study analyzed India's trends of electoral freebies and fiscal deficits in India between 2010 and 2023. As per this graph shown here, freebie allocation stood at about rupees 2,500 crores in 2010 and rose to over rupees 12,000 crores plus by 2023. The fiscal deficit, or the shortfall that occurs when a government's total expenditure exceeds its total revenue, saw a steady increase from rupees 3,000 crores in 2010 to rupees 20,000 crores in 2023. Let's get into the micro picture and see this from a state lens. Karnataka, for instance, used to be a revenue surplus state in 2023-24 by rupees 402 crore. It had spent over rupees 97,813 crores on 5 guarantee schemes in just 2 years by 2025. As per a CAG report in 2025, this led to a revenue deficit of rupees 9,271 crore, and the state's capital expenditure fell by rupees 5,229 crore, causing incomplete projects to surge by 68%. Lack of projects would result in decrease in employment, which in turn would decrease the revenue generation as a state. Similarly, Telangana, state whose total debt stands at rupees 8 lakh crore as of December 2025, heard its CM Revanth Reddy himself say, "I have no money for capital expenditure." He added that there must be a nationwide discussion on the feasibility of welfare guarantees. In his words,
मगर कुर्सी में बैठने के बाद असली रूप हमें पता लग गया.
Come on, yes. Chief Minister is telling us that you realized only after you became Chief Minister that you can't pay for your guarantees.
a stark admission indeed. So it turns out that the impact on state exchequer is not just in the form of increasing state debts and fiscal deficits, but also lowering capital expenditure on infrastructure, industries, and GDP contributing sectors, therefore increasing unemployment and lowering growth rates. Over recent state elections saw guarantees involving monthly cash transfers to women. Though these cash transfers offer assistance and a sense of economic agency, its multiplier effects are yet to be determined as the evidence is still negligible. However, what we do know is that these cash transfers take up 6% of states' revenue expenditure and even exceed 8% in states like Karnataka, West Bengal and Jharkhand. The freebies contest and impact has even forced the Supreme Court in February 2026 to criticize the practice of announcing freebies before elections, claiming that it discourages willingness to work among people, while the ECI had affirmed in 2024 that it cannot fully regulate the policy decisions or election promises of political parties, nor are freebies defined as corrupt practices, but it has been pushing for parties to disclose the financial health of the state and the financial feasibility of their promises to voters.
It would be extremely difficult to define freebies. So what is necessary? The necessary is that the fiscal health of the state must be known to the public. What is debt to GDP or GSDP ratio of that state? What is how much interest you will pay on that promise, how much you will borrow?
This, however, is not a hard and fast rule, nor has any government brought in laws related to freebies to fix these loopholes. Finally, here's something to think about before we wrap this section up. When Tamil Nadu gave birth to the freebie culture, its commitment to industrial development under the administrations of Karunanidhi, MGR and the successor Jayalalitha made the state capable of implementing freebies. The overall GDP growth of the state from 1980 to 2010 was 6.3% per annum, which was slightly higher than all India average. This is a learning that many states today have failed to follow, and state debts have increased beyond means in the past 15 years. Therefore, amidst this competitive race for bartering votes with freebies and still waiting on its multiplier effect to prove all pessimists wrong, how do we as voters analyze schemes smartly? Here's what you need to take away. We know that political parties offer voters a preview of their vision in manifestos ahead of an election. While freebies make the rally speeches and news headlines, welfare quietly simmers in silence in the pages of manifesto booklets and PDFs. But how do we differentiate between the two? Here are 4 key points for your reference. 1. Freebies tend to be beneficial for a short duration, whereas welfare schemes tend to be beneficial for a longer duration. Take appliances like mixers or refrigerators. They last for a few years, whereas welfare schemes that ensure food and water security have a lifelong impact as mentioned earlier. 2. Economically, freebies have a high consumption effect rather than a multiplier effect in the case of welfare schemes. This means that not only are freebies consumed quickly, but they also eat up the state exchequer just as quickly, especially when a state is not financially sound to afford the promised freebie. For instance, the DMK announced the Ilatarasi coupon scheme, offering rupees 8,000 worth of coupons to nearly 2 crore non-income paying tax households. On the other hand, a welfare scheme such as the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana mandates that the house constructed or purchased with central assistance must be in the name of the female head of the household or in the joint name of the husband and wife. 3. While welfare schemes focus on societal development by providing basic needs to all, freebies tend to focus on fulfilling higher needs for some. That is, they tend to be targeted to consolidate vote banks. These vote banks today include women, youth, farmers, religious or caste groups, and so on. For instance, the Aam Aadmi Party government in Delhi provided 20,000 liters of free water monthly to households with functional water meters for low-income groups and tenants in 2013. If usage exceeded 20,000 liters, the entire amount would be billed. However, a welfare scheme would ensure tapped water is provided to all households. And lastly, welfare schemes provide slow gratification, while freebies provide instant gratification. The multiplier effect of something as basic as a midday meal is experienced in the years to come, while freebies like TV, cash dolls, saris and dhotis bring immediate joy with little to no multiplier effect. These are the 4 key points, and this is where your role becomes important in understanding if the promises are realistic, feasible, and offer long-term successes both to you and the state that you reside in. On the screen is a framework for you to understand what's a welfare measure and what is a freebie. Say we test welfare or welfare sounding promises against these variables, we can soon differentiate between a welfare scheme and a freebie and make electoral choices wisely with a futuristic vision in mind. Make sure that you keep this matrix handy and start analyzing promises termed as welfare against this matrix to see where it lands you. So, where do you draw the line between welfare and freebies? Drop your thoughts below.